Joining me now from Kiev, Ukraine, is Democratic Senator Ben Cardin, member of the Foreign Relations Committee, and Republican Senator Rob Portman, member of the Homeland Security Committee and Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you're here long distance with me. Senator Cardin, I'll reach out to you first, sir.
Thanks,
what is
Alex.
the mood like there in Kiev today?
I'm telling you, I think the people are very excited. You're going to see, I think, record numbers come out to vote tomorrow. The people want to make their determination on their own government, and they do not want to be interfered with, particularly by Russia. So I sense here that tomorrow is the day of destiny, that you're going to see a large voter turnout. There are a lot of parliamentarians in the United States here to show our support for the Ukrainian people and their right of self-determination.
Well, certainly by your presence, that is evident. Senator Portman, will tomorrow be a legitimate election? And as far as the U.S. is concerned, would the top contenders end up being friendly to the West, or might they get pulled toward Moscow?
Alex, I think it'll be, from all we can tell, a good election. We've been here today meeting with government officials, but also election law experts really from around the world who are watching carefully. They think the preparations have been appropriate. They think a lot of folks are going to come out, high turnout. There are two areas of the country, two regions in eastern Ukraine where there's been a lot of violence, and there is concern there that we might not see the turnout that we would hope for because, frankly, these insurgents who are there are intimidating the voters through the deaths that you talked about. The 40 people who have died in the last few days have been in that area. So that's the one concern. It's about 10% of the population. We do hope that there will be polling places available for folks in those regions. But other than that, it looks like it's going to be a high turnout. And we're here just to support the Ukrainian people, to say we want...
Clearly, we're having a little bit of a trouble with our satellite signal right there.
This all began.
Oh, good. Senator, you're back with us. We had a little bit of a drop-off. I'm going to continue, hoping that this is clear. No, we got most of it, though. Senator Cardin, U.S. was saying recently that the recent separatist-led elections in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, they were fraudulent because the previous governments there were deposed by force. Russia says that's exactly what happened in Kiev, that it was a coup d'etat. So why do we see this election as being any more legitimate than the ones in Crimea and the East?
Well, first of all, Russia has violated every international norm, every agreement that they've entered into. They violated the Helsinki principles, the UN Charter, their own agreements in this region. So when they took over Crimea, they did it. It was a totally illegal action, and I think the global community understands that. That's why sanctions have been imposed, not just by the United States, but also by Europe. So what we're seeing tomorrow is an open, and we hope a free election where people will have the opportunity, whether they are from the Russian community or they're from Kyiv or whether they're from eastern Ukraine. We hope people will have a chance to do what democracies do, choose their leader. And then we will expect that new country, that new leadership, to respect the rights of all citizens wherever their ethnic background may be.
Well, and to add to that, Senator Portman, President Putin says that he will recognize tomorrow's vote. He will work with this new government, but this follows reports this week that the Russian troops are moving back from Ukraine's border. So what is your read on these moves? Do you think he's trying to de-escalate the crisis?
I certainly hope so, but, you know, trust but verify is certainly something we have learned. I think we've been naive at some points about how we deal with President Putin, and we'll see. I mean, the Pentagon and NATO sources have indicated to me that there may not be a significant pullback from those borders. We also know that some of the violence that's in eastern Ukraine can be traced back to Russia, and there's a clear border incursion going on just about every day now where people are trying to come in from Russia with weapons and sometimes heavy equipment that can be used in a military fashion. So, look, it's good that he is saying respect the election results. I hope that's true. I think he is kind of seeing the writing on the wall, which is that the Ukrainian government has prepared for these elections properly. People are excited about it. The turnout should be high. And I'm hopeful that this will give the new government the ability to get on its feet and to get help from around the world to begin to prepare for what will be a bright new future for Ukraine if we can all stand together and ensure that it's a a fair election and that they have the chance to move this country forward.
Senator Cardin, regarding the efficacy of sanctions, sir, as you know, this week Russia signed a $400 billion gas supply deal with China. That is the world's top energy consumer. Does this prove that Russia can't be isolated by sanctions from the West?
Well, first of all, we need an energy policy so we're not dependent upon any country, particularly those that don't share our values. So the deal between Russia and China, that's their business. We just want to make sure allies have adequate energy supplies, and that's something we really need to work on. And one last point about President Putin. I hope, like Senator Portman, that he is sincere in saying he'll recognize the election, but his past has shown that he says one thing and does just the opposite. So we really need to see whether he, in fact, backs away from his interference in Ukraine. And the best way to show that would be let's work with the Crimea and get Crimea back into Ukraine.
Senator Portman, I'm going to switch gears with you here, sir, and I'm glad to hear your agreement on that. We learned yesterday that Secretary John Kerry has agreed to testify before the House Oversight Committee to answer questions about Benghazi. He, of course, was a senator at the time of the attack. So is this a purely political move to get the image out there of an Obama cabinet member being pulled up to Capitol Hill and taking the oath with cameras flashing?
I don't know. I haven't followed what he has said, but I do know that we ought to get to the bottom of it and find out the facts. 4 Americans were killed, including a U.S. ambassador for the first time in 3 or 4 decades, and it's a serious matter. The questions that I keep asking, Alex, are actually also about what happened to the terrorists who did attack that compound and that did kill our American ambassador and 3 other brave Americans. And so I think there are some legitimate questions that need to be asked based on the most recent emails and recently disclosed. It would appear that there's, an appropriate investigatory process here that needs to be undertaken. I hope that the committee, being Republican and Democrat alike, will dig deep and find the answers for the American people.
And same question to you, Senator Cardin. Your thoughts on Secretary Kerry testifying?
Senator Portman and I have agreed on just about everything on this interview. We may disagree on Benghazi. This has been investigated and investigated and investigated. I know that Secretary Kerry believes in a very open relationship with Congress, yet he's coming on the Hill. Whatever the reason is, it's always good to have him before our committees. But let's look at all the investigations that have been done here and not make politics over our embassy security issues. It's just too important of a subject. Let's make sure our embassies are as safe as possible.
And finally, gentlemen, this question to both of you regarding the VA hospital scandal. Should Secretary Shinseki resign? I'll let you have first stab at that, Senator Portman.
Yeah, I've not called for his resignation yet, even though I'm outraged by what I'm learning, and I've not called for it because I do think that IG investigation is about to report. I do think that there are other facts we don't have yet, but if it turns out that it goes up to the Secretary's office, which it may well, and certainly there needs to be much more accountability, then I will not only call for his resignation, but others who are responsible for not just the poor care our veterans have gotten. These people should be getting first in line for the best care, and it turns out they're sort of last in line for mediocre care in many cases. But the fraud that was involved, that in some cases, and I don't know if this happened in Ohio or not, because, again, we don't have the information yet, but in some cases, there was actually fraud to be able to hide from the American people and from our veterans the long waiting list. So I'm eager to see what the results are of these investigations, and especially, given that I'm from Ohio, we've got 3 or 4 veterans hospitals there and a lot of clinics. I want to make sure that our veterans in Ohio are getting the best care.
Senator Cardin, is the resignation in order?
We're back in agreement, except I would say Maryland rather than Ohio. I want to make sure our veterans get the very best care. And quite frankly, there's been a lot of good things that have happened in veterans' health care in this country. We've reduced wait times for disability determinations. A lot of good things happening. But if there's secret lists, people being denied care, people being very much disadvantaged because of this type of action. That's what apparently happened in Phoenix. That's unacceptable. Those responsible must be held accountable, and we've got to make sure that never happens again.
Maryland Democratic Senator Ben Cardin, Ohio Republican Senator Rob Portman. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the long-distance interview. Safe travels to you both. We'll look forward to seeing you again.